Hello and welcome. I'm Nick Bailey, and this is From Day One. I'm reaching you live from the Catskill Mountains here in New York State, where there apparently is a hurricane approaching. So my colleague, Kaylin Clements, has joined this webinar as well. She's behind the scenes. So if you hear any noise behind me or if anything goes wrong with my connection, don't worry, we're gonna keep on going and she'll jump right in and finish up. So anyways, welcome to our webinar in coordination with Kintone, entitled Consolidate Your HR Operations in One Portal. In today's age, even with our digital advances, things can still feel very disconnected. Now more than ever, people are either sharing data between platforms via spreadsheets or relying on face-to-face chats to fix mistakes. And with everything moving remote, your tools are all your team has now to get the job done. It's clear that often what you have isn't working. So today we're gonna hear HR coordinator, Vincent Dang. He's gonna explain how Kintone's HR team avoids these messy email chains and spreadsheet sharing to handle every part of their operations using the Kintone platform. We'll cover how Kintone's platform can be adapted to suit any task, why his team uses it for every process that they have. For those of you that might not be familiar with Kintone, it's an HR platform that treats your employees to a benefit they will enjoy working in every day. Kintone is an all-in-one workplace platform that empowers your team to build and customize applications you need to effectively manage your data and workflows for better collaboration without any coding. So now, a few quick logistical items. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on demand about 24 hours after the event, so look out for an email about 24 hours from now that'll have that link. Around 2:35, that's in about 33 minutes for those of you in different time zones from now, we'll have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It's right to the bottom of your Zoom client there. So now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Vincent Dang from Kintone. Hi, Vincent.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much for joining today. So tell us a little bit about Kintone and maybe just a sentence or two to get people oriented.
Yeah, so simply put, Kintone is an all-in-one workplace platform that allows teams to build, share, and automate custom workflows and business applications. So the really great thing about it is that you can create the applications to fit how you do your business, and no coding is required to create these things.
What are some of the problems that it's intended to solve? Like, what's it for?
Well, it's intended to solve a large part of it is solving communication problems that are caused by having too many disconnected apps. So switching back and forth through different software and tabs can be very time consuming, and being able to share this information quickly with your team becomes very difficult, and there's an overall lack of structure for knowledge sharing that I think a lot of HR professionals experience.
You have a background yourself in HR, right?
Yes. So I've been working in HR for a little bit over 7 years now. I started my first HR job in Japan at a small 80-person HR consulting company, and then I also moved to a larger 5,000 employee IT company. So I have experience working in both small scale and large scale HR projects.
What were some of the reasons you thought Kintone would be a good match for the HR community?
Well, what I saw that Kintone was able to do was the ability to create and streamline processes by myself to fit how my team and I do our work. So I don't have to rely on the IT department to create sophisticated applications. We can do this all by ourselves. And so I felt that Kintone really gives the HR community a sense of power in being able to control how we do our work.
Gotcha. What were some of the issues that you encountered, when you were leading a small HR team at Kintone?
Yeah, well, they're very much like some of the problems that I just mentioned too. Like being in a small HR team, you are responsible for all HR processes, from recruitment, compliance, payroll, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of different tasks. And because we were small, we were using a lot of disconnected apps. And so it caused communication problems. We would email each other, we would message each other through different outlets. And so information got very messy and sort of disconnected. So by being able to use Kintone to consolidate all this information into one platform, made it much easier for my team to communicate and then streamline and improve our processes.
Gotcha. Now I know you're going to be walking through some of what you did and how that worked and how you approach these problems. With some slides. As you get that started, like what are some of the things that you're hoping people who are participating now are walking away with from participating in this conversation today?
Well, I hope that what people can get out of this session today is a better understanding of how we at Kintone consolidate our data, tasks, and communication for an easier, more accountable work experience. So our hope is that this overview will provide you with some tips and tricks that you can each apply at your own individual organizations.
Excellent. Well, I will get out of the way and let me throw some slides up and get a little more hands-on and walk through it. So I'll be back in a couple minutes and we'll do a bit of a Q&A. For those of you guys participating, thanks so much. And the Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. If you think of anything while this is going on, just hit that Q&A button and we'll get to it as Vincent runs through his presentation. Thanks again, Vincent.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Okay. Great. All right. Sorry. So thank you everyone again for attending. So today I want to talk to you about how to consolidate your HR operations in one portal with Kintone. Once again, I just introduced myself. My name is Vincent Dang. I'm the HR generalist at Kintone Corporation. And before I get into talking about the Kintone platform, I first want to talk a little bit about myself. So I mentioned I've been working in HR for a little bit over 7 years now. And the majority of that time was actually in Japan. Currently, I'm part of an HR team of 3 people in the US, although I also work closely with the overseas offices, which has over 40 HR members. My previous company was a tech company, which still relied on traditional software like email and Excel to do a majority of the work. It wasn't until I joined Kintone when I realized the power of having reliable HR tools. In particular, having everything consolidated into one platform. My current team manages almost all our HR processes on the Kintone platform, and we created all the applications by ourselves. Today, I want to share with you how we use Kintone for our HR processes. Now, before I dive into the specifics and show you some of the apps that we have, I want to mention this main question: why do we consolidate everything onto one platform? Well, for one, it's efficient. I don't need to communicate through my personal email nor the general HR email to my colleagues. At the same time, I don't need to download different Excel and PowerPoint files while using a separate software to chat with the team member. I have all the information immediately in front of me, so I don't have to switch to different programs in and out to do my tasks. In addition, it's very secure to have everything on one platform. I've had to deal with a lot of sensitive information as an HR professional, and personally, I'm very paranoid when I'm sending or receiving confidential information by email. So I end up checking once, twice, even 3 times over what I'm sending and who I'm sending it to. I think a lot of HR professionals can relate to that. And with Kintone, there are very intricate permission settings that allow me to control who is able to see certain information. These settings allow me to be very secure with all the sensitive information that I work with. Now, I want to dive deeper into the platform itself. Within the Kintone platform, HR manages everything in what's called a space. And this is an example of our HR space. Within this space, we have this main page where we can post announcements. So that's the red box on the left-hand side. As well, we have open threads for discussions and announcements. So that's the blue box on the top right. And then there's the apps, which is within the green box. So we have all our HR-related discussion on the threads here, and also create our own HR apps on this space. Other departments at Kintone similarly have their own spaces, such as a marketing space or a sales space. The spaces serve each individual department, but they all live within the Kintone portal. So data and information can be shared among different departments seamlessly. I hope you understand now the concept of a space, because now I want to dive more into the specific apps and features of Kintone that the HR team uses. So needless to say, recruitment is a huge part of HR, and we use Kintone to manage a majority of our recruitment process. We manage these on apps that we created, which include a candidate and job openings database. And these apps themselves are a key feature of Kintone because they allow you to create customizable workflows that fit your team's needs. So when we first approach a candidate, we have an online form, which we call the careers application form, that allows a candidate to input their information, which will then automatically be transferred into the Kintone platform. You can see on the left screenshot that basic information can be inputted, and on the right screenshot, even further detailed information, such as the candidate's requested salary, possible interview dates, and a table for references. What's great is that all these fields are customizable. For example, you can add in a field to input graduation date, or you can also add screening questions, which we actually do use in our form. It's very much like creating your own questionnaire or survey. And the great feature is the ability to set parameters to the fields. For example, what's inputted into the email address field must be a proper email address, and the phone number field requires you to input only numbers. And this seems like a small thing, but it allows us to avoid fixing errors or reaching out to candidates about clarifying their information, about possible mistakes they may have inputted into the form. The form itself is a simple link, which you can include on job openings sites. The links can also be managed through our job openings app, which I'll go into a bit further in a later slide. Now, once a candidate submits the careers application form, that information is sent to our candidate database app, and a new record is created. You can see here a list of candidates in our app, and the list grows bigger as candidates submit their forms. The list view is also customizable. For example, this column shows the job that the candidate is applying to. But if I prefer to see what university the candidate graduated from, I can easily add a column to show this in the list view. What's also great is that you can open each candidate's record individually to look at all the information that they submitted. So here's a more in-depth view of an individual's record within the candidate database. You can see here all the information that the candidate submitted, which you can then edit and update anytime. If you look on the right screenshot, we have fields to input interviewers and interview notes. So we can evaluate candidates on this one single record while having all the candidates' information available for us to see. Some notable features that makes my life easier is setting permissions so that only HR or the interviewers can view this record. We can also make certain fields in the record confidential. So if I didn't want the interviewers to see the candidate's gender or most recent company, I can set the permissions so that only HR can view that field. In addition, there are notification settings that will tell the system to remind interviewers the day before an interview, and another reminder after an interview to tell them to input their notes. So we're able to get notifications automatically, and I can avoid the manual work of reminding people myself. Now I want to share a different app that allows us to manage our job openings. This is a very simple app that serves as a database for all our open and closed positions. So we allow this app to be viewable to all our employees. So anyone can see what jobs are open and what sites we are posting on, and also the job description. An employee can look at the records in this app to view the open positions and possibly refer us to someone they know. And this app also links to our candidates database app that I just mentioned. So that's the picture in the middle at the bottom. So this table of related records links to the candidate database app. And although this job openings app is open for everyone to view, I don't want everyone to see candidate sensitive information. So I have view permissions in place so that only HR can see this related records table that shows the current candidates applying for this position. This is a really great feature that makes sharing data seamless and secure, because HR members can see more data on this record rather than have to switch to a different app. One other feature that we implemented in this app is process management. So hiring managers can create a record, input the job description, what type of candidate they're looking for, and then submit the record for HR to review and accept. All right, so far I've gone over our careers form that sends data directly to our candidate database. I also just explained about our job openings app, which links to our candidate database and also allows for process management. Now, at this point, you may be thinking there's reminder settings, process management settings, linking apps. It may seem a bit sophisticated, but I want to reiterate that all these apps were developed solely by the HR department. We didn't need to reach out to IT to create this for us. And there's a lot more that we have created. And so now I want to get into introducing a range of apps from simple information sharing records to an app that allows HR to promote and maintain culture. And I want to briefly share with you what we do on these various apps. One very useful app we have is this HR Wiki app. So this is an app just for the HR team. And I think HR professionals can relate that there's so many different aspects of HR work. There's managing payroll, there's compliance, onboarding, offboarding procedures, etc. And we use this app as our team's wiki to share information about the processes for each of our HR tasks. We create the records ourselves and refer to it whenever we need. For example, if someone in charge of payroll is out sick, another member of the team can refer to a payroll record within this app to remind ourselves the exact processes. As well, it makes onboarding a new HR member much easier, as they have this extensive database about all our HR processes to refer to. A similar app we use is called our HR Task app. This app is also just for the HR team, and it simply allows us to manage all the tasks that we have at hand, whether they're recurring or one-off tasks. For example, in this screenshot, we have a record for a recurring task of buying happy hour food and drinks. Within this record, we implemented text tables where we can input what foods we bought, as well as refer to all the past purchases. So what's really great is that if a new HR member is given the task of preparing happy hour drinks, they can look at this record, see what has been bought in the past, what the general budget is, and find out what worked well and what didn't. It makes onboarding a new team member much easier. Additionally, each record allows you to write comments on the right-hand side. So you can communicate with your team members about this certain task on the record itself. So in this example, my colleague Megumi is suggesting for us to buy food at the farmer's market. So we don't have to email each other back and forth about this task. All the information is already on this record, and we can communicate directly here. So this is a list view of our admin task app. We have set the list view to show the due dates of the tasks, as well as the status and who is assigned to the task. So again, this list view is fully customizable as well. All right, moving on, here's another simple app, and it's an app just for meeting minutes. As an HR professional, I have a lot of conversations with different employees, and in the HR world, precise documentation is necessary, especially when you're having serious conversations. And if it's not in writing, it sort of never happened, right? So that's why we created a meeting minutes app to keep track of all the conversations we have. Of course, we set the permissions so that only the appropriate people can see them. For example, sharing the notes to only HR and the employee who is in the meeting. This makes looking back at all the past notes easy. We can then have conversations within each record to further clarify certain points. Again, I don't need to bother with email and attaching and sending a Word file with the meeting minutes. Communications can all be done within this app. Next, we have our employee database, which is something every HR team needs to manage. So in our employee database app, we have a record for each employee, which includes all the essential information we need about the employee. So the name, address, social security number, etc. In addition, we can attach files and images to each record, such as a copy of the employee's passport or driver's license. We can also communicate with the employee about their information in the comments section on the right-hand side of the screen. If an employee has recently moved, they can notify us in the comments, and I can then update the information right away. As well, the entire HR team can see the changes made, as there is a history trace of all changes to a record. Okay, so in general, we don't use emails for communication with our employees. So I want to introduce an admin desk app that we use sort of like a ticket desk for our employees. So this allows us to completely avoid communication by email. Now, HR receives a lot of different questions and requests, so we made this app to consolidate all the inquiries that we receive. An employee can create a record that will then notify HR that an inquiry has been received. We then check the record and assign an HR member to answer the employee's question in that record. Files can be attached if necessary. Additionally, the employee can choose to make the inquiry public or private. If it's a public record, then all employees can see the record when browsing the app. This allows employees to see what questions have been asked and how it was answered. So in this record, you can see that one of our employees, Tim, is asking about receiving a WeWork key card. And subsequently, an HR member answered his question in the comments. So that's on the right side. And you can maybe now see why we never email each other internally, because all the functions for communications are already within Kintone. Tim can easily create a record on this app, and we can communicate directly on this record. And so I found that by communicating everything within Kintone, it's much more effective and it's much more streamlined rather than switching to email and writing up a response. Now I want to share some apps that we created that allow us to promote culture at Kintone. So here at Kintone, we have what's called a PIG benefit, which stands for Personal Interest Groups. It's basically a club benefit, which employees use to socialize doing non-work related activities. To better manage this benefit, we created our own PIG app, which allows us to keep track of the activities, costs, members participating, etc. We also make use of open threads on our space so members can share what activity was done. So we found this benefit very useful as we get a lot of visitors from our overseas offices. So we can use this benefit to interact with each other. As well, members from the overseas offices can see what events and activities are happening in the US because we're all on the same Kintone system. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the open threads feature on Kintone. In our HR space, we have various threads such as benefits, payroll, compliance threads. This is very similar to a forum where people can create their own threads and start a conversation. And HR, we use these threads in a variety of ways to ask questions directly to stakeholders, to make announcements, to seek out opinions. And so I want to show in this example, I made an announcement to promote virtual social sessions, which we felt was needed during this time. And there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can post on threads. You can attach files, post images, edit text color. And there's also a like button, so you know who has read and acknowledged your post. And the last slide, the last app I want to share with you is our Gratitude Bank app. So this app has allowed us to digitalize sending out thanks or congratulatory messages to our colleagues. In this app, you can create a record to designate someone to receive a congrats or thanks message, and then reach out to other members for them to write down their messages. So in this example, we are writing messages to our colleague, Michelle, who is celebrating her second year at Kintone. With permission settings in place, Michelle won't be able to view the record until it's published. So it's easy to make the message a surprise. So in the past, we used to pass around a congratulatory card and have members write down individual messages, and the cards ended up getting lost or forgotten about. So having digitalized this process has made the HR's lives much easier for doing this and promoting culture through this application. All right, so that was a lot that I just showed you, and I mentioned a lot of features about Kintone, and perhaps it sounds a bit sophisticated, but I want to emphasize that making an app is it's very easy, and there's a lot of pre-made templates on the system to work from. And however, the system is also, it's intricate enough for you to make very sophisticated apps that allow you to streamline communications and share information effortlessly. I feel that the customizability of Kintone gives a lot of power to the HR team and allows us to make apps the way that we want it. And the system itself, it's really a blank canvas for you to design and create your own apps. And it may seem overwhelming at first, but if you think about it, when you first opened up Excel for the first time, that's also just a blank canvas. But once you get used to the features and you start creating your own apps on Kintone, you unlock a lot of possibilities that can make your work life much more efficient. So as an HR professional, I really want to focus on things that I want to do rather than what I have to do. So I want to build up culture. I want to create better company policies, increase employee happiness. But I can't do that if I'm spending too much time switching back and forth between multiple programs and platforms that really slow down my work. So having everything on one system allows HR at Kintone to streamline the more mundane work processes, which allows us to really focus on what matters. So that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for listening.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Vincent. Just jumping back in here. Thanks so much for walking us through that. We actually have quite a few questions, a whole bunch here. So I guess I should just jump right in. Let's see here, let me press this little button. here's a straightforward one. Can Kintone handle payroll? Does it do payroll?
Okay, so the Kintone system itself, it can't handle the actual payroll processing. We use a different system to handle actually like sending money to employees' bank accounts. So that's a different system. But we do have our separate payroll apps on Kintone, which we use to communicate about the actual tasks and processes for doing payroll and being able to share that not only with the HR here, but the HR in the overseas offices as well.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Here's another one. That's an excellent question. What are some of the platforms that Kintone is replacing when people are implementing it that you're seeing? For example, what would be some advantages of using this approach instead of just relying on like the Microsoft Suite or Google Docs or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So some platforms that I was very surprised when I joined Kintone was that no one within Kintone internally, no one emails each other really about anything when we're communicating.
Right.
We do it all on the Kintone platform, whether we want to just send each other a private message or like sending a message on an open app. So everything we do internally and communication wise is on Kintone. So we've effectively sort of replaced email in that sense. And by being able to create all these apps and these records within these apps, we don't really use that much Excel as well, because Kintone allows us to record, input all our data into these records, and just it's sort of a much more like advanced version of Excel, in my opinion. We're able to customize the data how we want it.
Sure. Here's another good one. I was actually wondering this. Can this integrate with your website? Like, for example, could you embed forms onto a job page? Could you have it exposed to the outside world in some way?
In terms of the technical access of like embedding a certain an app to a company website, I'm not sure of the unfortunately, I'm not sure of the technical aspects about that, but I do know that we're able to easily export all the data within the records and apps easily out into, if you prefer to use Excel, you can export data from Kintone into an Excel sheet. As well, you're easily able to create graphs, tables, and sort of export that out in case you want to put that onto your own website.
Gotcha. Here's a question from Lisa. It's, do you use Kintone as your ATS, that's applicant tracking system? And also, how do you connect with social media to push positions out, to attract candidates, to market your opening positions? And do you have outside vendors that sources candidates, or does Kintone have anything to do with sourcing candidates and supporting that?
Yeah, so
a couple of different questions.
Yeah, so let me, first I'll start with the applicant tracking system. So yes, we use Kintone exclusively to keep track of all the applicants. So that's the candidate database that I showed you in an earlier slide. And so this has all the functions we need. We were able to keep all the candidates' basic information, as well as conduct our interviews and write down, if we were to hire candidates, write down like how we would onboard them all into this one app. And we're able to, I mentioned we have this career applications form, which we use basically when we approach a candidate, we're able to send them just a simple link for them to input their information. And once they submit it, that information is then automatically inputted into the Kintone platform. So when we're sourcing candidates, we still use external vendors such as like LinkedIn, Glassdoor to post our job openings, and we're able to link our careers application form on that, so that those looking at LinkedIn, they're able to see the job description and just simply fill out that form. So then that is then inputted into the Kintone system for us to then manage and then reach out to the candidate further.
Got it. Makes sense. Bunch of good questions coming in. Here's another. Can you use Kintone to talk to companies who don't use Kintone?
Yes, yes. So that's really that's a really great question, and it's actually one of my favorite one of my favorite features on Kintone. There's a so I mentioned internally we have this HR space, and there's threads, apps, and if we want to use this externally, we can create a guest space. So if we want to use, we can create our own space to exclusively communicate with an external vendor. And the HR team, we use it. We do have some recruiters that we work with. And so we create this guest space so that we're able to communicate with them on these open threads. We're also able to create applications within the guest space so that when a candidate is being introduced, the vendor is able to just create a record within the app. And then so we can then see a database as more candidates are being introduced, there's more records being added. And so it's easier for us to manage all the candidates within the database rather than using email, for example. You know, we're getting emails one by one about different candidates. It becomes a little bit disconnected and hard to organize. Yeah.
Got it. Another good question. Can you talk a little bit about globalization? Like, how do you offer language support in multiple languages, which languages, and so on?
Yeah, so so Kintone itself, so we're actually our headquarters are in Japan, and we also have offices in Shanghai, as well as Ho Chi Minh City. And so the great thing about Kintone, there is this localization feature with when you're creating an app itself. And so if you're creating an app in English, you can then translate all the fields into if a user were using Kintone, the Kintone system in Japanese, you can localize it all so that all the fields, all the information is then automatically seen in Japanese if someone is using the system in Japanese. And of course, that's Chinese, Vietnamese as well. So you're able to see the same app and records in real time, but just in a different language.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Here's a question that's not a feature question. It's a question about you. Can you talk a bit about how how things have changed with your HR processes, and in the context of this presentation and these tools, based on the COVID-19 situation that you and everyone are in?
Yeah, it's funny because I felt like even before COVID-19, Kintone really allowed employees to work from home. And we at Kintone as a company, we always allowed everyone to work from home. So even with the current COVID-19 situation, not much has really changed in terms of how we do our work. It's really, besides the fact that we're physically at home. The Kintone platform, it's really easy to access. All you need is an internet connection and an internet browser. There's no complicated like program installation or anything. So the way we're able to communicate each other and do our work, it hasn't really changed that much as a result of COVID-19. I feel like what has changed is just that we've been able to use the system much more to promote, virtual socializing, creating apps that are able to promote our culture further while we're all working from home.
Got it. Got it. One more question here. Starting to run out of time, but we have a few more that we can get to. Question about accessibility. It's another good feature question. Does Kintone have accessibility functionality? And if so, could you walk us through that a little bit?
Accessibility as in, sorry.
Usually we think of that in terms of people with disabilities or difficulty with reading and that kind of thing. Or it might be a question about access and permissions. I'm not sure. I'll have to guess what the questioner was thinking when they said it, but those are two possible ones.
I see. Well, in terms of accessible, so I just mentioned, yeah, like all you really need is an internet connection and an internet browser to access the system itself. So in that sense, it's quite easily accessible. In terms of for example, make it easier for people with disabilities to able to see the system more easily. I don't think there's currently a feature that allows for that. I think we would have to ask the technical team for that. But from what my understanding, Kintone doesn't feature anything that will able to like have a dark mode, for example. I don't think it's implemented yet.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, we're running a little bit out of time. Is there any other questions that were unasked, or anything else that you want to quickly get in before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I feel like once you really the Kintone system, it's, as I mentioned, it's a blank canvas, and it seems overwhelming at first when you first start using a system, and it's not like all these apps are readily available for you to use. By day one, you have your own great applicant tracking system. But once you really take the time to just sort of try apps and create your own apps, you really see the power of Kintone. And it's not difficult. It's really easy to create an app. And I mentioned it's quite sophisticated as well to create very complicated ones as well. So I think if you give it a try, I think you'll really see the true power of Kintone by being able to create all these apps yourself instead of relying on the IT team or a different person to create processes for your team.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Vincent. That was a really, really informative presentation. I'm actually taking some notes myself. Thanks again to Kintone, and thanks to all of you who are listening and hearing me right now for participating. If you'd like to join us for more virtual events, please head to our website, fromdayone.co. That's FROMDAYONE.co to check out more of our upcoming webinars. We have one coming up this Thursday on the 6th called New Ways of Working in a Post-Pandemic World. Next week, Tuesday, August 11th, Lead Like a Human, the HR Leader's Guide to Building Engaged Teams. And then the last thing I'd mention is that we have launched a pretty extensive series of virtual conferences. We just did our first one on July 22nd. It was a great conference with a lot of fireside chats and panels and a lot of ways that you can interact with other participants. Perhaps not quite the same thing as being in the same room with some of your peers, but pretty good for where we are today. We're doing one every month starting in September, starting on September 24th. We'll be covering issues such as HR leadership, revisiting diversity and inclusion toward the end of the year, talking about parenting and family issues and women in the workplace in October and November. Check out our website. Again, that's fromdayone.co, FROMDAYONE.co. And you can see the lineup of virtual conferences. And we actually have some really aggressive early bird pricing too, if you want to participate in those. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.